really happy to have Dick Schwartz here with us today to talk about parts work and the self. And we, just to give you a little bit of a heads up, we're going to have a short conversation, and then Dick is also going to lead us in a meditation where you actually will get to experience some of what IFS is about. So look forward to that. But before we kind of jump into that, I really want to give Dick a chance to begin to explain, when we talk about parts work, what are we talking about? Because I think I have an idea in my head of what that might mean, and maybe you all have ideas in your head about what that might mean. So I'd love for you to start when this whole idea of parts, and how many parts do I have, or does a person have? How might we identify those, and how does IFS try to balance out the different parts in a person such that there is kind of greater freedom? So, and thank you for coming again.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Soren. And so this goes back a while. As Emily said, I'm trained as a family therapist, and in the early 80s, I had a collection of bulimic clients. We were doing an outcome study who weren't getting better with straight family therapy, and started talking about these parts of them. And I got a little nervous because they were talking about them as if they had a lot of autonomy. And I thought maybe these are multiple personality disorder clients, until I noticed I've got them too. And some of mine are as extreme about food as theirs are. And then I got intrigued because these clients could describe how they interacted with each other. So if something bad happened in one of my clients' life, this critic would attack her brutally. And that would bring up a part that could make her feel totally bereft and empty and alone. And then to the rescue almost would be the binge that would take her out of her body. But then the critic would come back and attack her again. So as a family therapist, it sounded like these sequences of interaction and a little system in there. And I just started to experiment with helping clients get to know these parts. At first trying to stand up to the critic or control the binge, but finding that that made it worse. But if clients could get into what we're now calling a mindful state, and not just observe their thoughts and emotions, which is most mindfulness practice, but actually engage them from a place of curiosity and compassion even, these parts would start talking to them and tell them all kinds of things that surprised them about how they got into these roles, some of which were quite destructive. But my position is we're all multiple personalities. Anybody here a multiple personality? I've never had that many people raise their hand. We don't all have multiple personality disorder, but we all have parts. And some of them, my position is it's the natural state of the mind to be divided that way, to be multiple, that each of them have valuable talents and resources, but trauma and then attachment injuries will take them out of their naturally valuable state and force them into these roles that they don't like, that they feel are really necessary to keep us safe. And so a lot of the work is designed to help them trust that they don't have to do that anymore, and then they transform.
Great. So for example, with the critic, so one way would be just to be aware that there's a critic voice happening right now that's judging me. You had said you really, within IFS, you actually engage the critic and listen to the critic. So how would that, how does that look in terms of that, like listening and engagement and curiosity?
Do you have a critic?
I have a critic, yeah, I have a critic.
All right, so if I were working with you, Soren, I would say, I'd like you to focus on that voice, or however you experience it in your body or around your body. Find it in your body.
Okay. My attention is brought to the right side of my head. Is where.
Right, and as you notice it there, how do you feel toward it? In other words, do you hate it, or you try to get rid of it?
Frustrating.
You're frustrated with it,
yeah, I don't
right?
really appreciate it that much.
Yeah. They're hard to appreciate at first.
And it's telling me right now I better do a good job at this. So hearing it right now, it's pretty loud.
So listen to it.
Yeah, don't mess up.
Don't mess up.
Yeah.
So what I found is, and let's keep going. So if you could please ask the parts that hate it or frustrated with it to just give us a little space to get to know it. So just see if those parts would be willing to step back a little bit and relax. And we're not going to give the critic more power. We're just going to get to know it a little bit.
Okay, I think so.
So focus on it again up here, and tell me how you feel toward it now.
Now it's kind of empty. I just see this. I feel this like sensations and sense of this kind of dark space that's on the right side of my head. I don't, but there's not an emotional
Charge
at this moment.
Does it feel like you'd be willing to get to know it now?
Sure. Yeah, I'm curious about what it is.
All right.
Yeah.
So let it know that,
Okay.
and just see how it reacts to your curiosity.
As best I can tell, it's cool.
Okay, but we can pause.
A little surprised, but cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So this would go on, and we would ask questions of it like, what's it afraid would happen if it didn't badger you all the time? And common answers to that are you would get hurt, or you wouldn't perform well, or you would take a risk, and so at that point, we know now what it's trying to protect. And I would have you show it appreciation in there for at least trying to protect you, even though it does it in this heavy-handed way sometimes. And often, right at that point, they just relax.
Yeah.
And that appreciation means a lot to those parts.
Yeah.
Because, most of us are fighting with them all day.
Right. Yeah. I noticed one of the beautiful things about your work is that you never do anything without the permission of the person's inner guidance. So if somebody is being evasive of a question, therapists might come up and say, "Hey, you're evading that question. I need to confront you, or I need to talk to you about that."
Right.
There's an energy that the therapist can bring to help bring something to awareness that the person might not be aware of. Your approach is a little bit differently, right? Can you say a little bit about the role of permission?
Well, we have these, what I call protective parts, the critic being one. And then we also have these parts that have been hurt really badly. And because they got hurt, and now they carry all the pain from the traumas, we, what I call, exile them inside. And the protectors are trying to contain those exiles and also protect them from getting triggered. So what I learned the hard way early on was to go to these protective parts first, like what's called resistance and other things, and approach them with respect and just say, I get that this is a scary idea of going to these very vulnerable places. We're not going to do it without your permission.
Wow.
But if you were to open the door to that, we could heal a lot of what's in there. And then you'd be relieved of this job. And if you didn't have to do this job, being the critic, what would you like to do instead? And you'd be amazed, because it's often exactly the opposite of what they've been doing for 30 years. Yeah.
But around trauma, it seems there's a protective voices or protective energy that's been developed by the person to survive, right, around that trauma.
Right.
And so if I hear you right, whatever's been protecting it and whatever patterns have come up to protect it, whether it's defensiveness or whatever, need to be understood and have compassion towards them.
Yes, so we work with those parts first, show them appreciation for, it's like the army or the military, for their service. And then ask what it is they're protecting, and then go for permission to go to that and change that. We don't expect these parts, even parts that suicidal or parts that have you addicted to something, we don't expect them to change until what they're protecting has been healed.
Wow. Okay. And what do you find is the key component to change? I mean, you've worked with people 35 years in this model, and there's a lot of people here who I know have done various kinds of therapies and practices. What in your years and years of work is like a key component that helps to support transformation? Is it when we turn towards what we thought was the enemy and make it our friend? Is that how would you describe that?
I've been meaning to use this line for a while, but as I was saying to the Dalai Lama a few months ago,
that part is happy now.
Right,
the part that wanted to do that.
Finally got there. It's a nice setup. I said, you tell us to go with compassion to our external enemies. Why not go with compassion to our internal enemies? So this is one of the basics of the approach is I find if you love what's in your way, it will transform. So, and most of us try to get rid of it and don't appreciate it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And that could be physical pain, that could be an inner critic, that could be whatever we think is the problem.
Yeah, all those, basically most of our thoughts and emotions are manifestations of these parts, and all kinds of symptoms are. And you asked about the key to healing. Early, I discovered that if you can get these parts to separate in open space, this other person emerges who knows how to heal them and can take over your session, and has qualities like calm, compassion, curiosity, all these called the 8 C words of self-leadership. And spontaneously, to a part they hated, like I had you get some parts to step back and you focused on the critic, was I'm just sorry that it has to do this. Right. Suddenly, out of the blue, with no practicing, they suddenly have compassion for this part, and they know how to relate to it in a way that's going to help it relax more.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So what if we you ready to guide us in an exercise?
Yeah, we'll try it.
Yeah?
So put your stuff down if you're up for this. If you aren't, just do what you normally do when you meditate. Is that how much time I have?
We can just take 7. We can go a few minutes.
7? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so first step is to think of a part of you that gets in your way and that you're annoyed with or you even hate, or that you're afraid of. So when you have such a part in mind, raise your hand just so I can see where we are. Okay, great. All right, you can put your hands down. And now focus on it and find it in your body or around your body. And that's not necessary. If you can't find it, that's okay. But if you can, then that place in your body can serve as a kind of anchor point. And as you notice it there, also notice how you feel toward it. As you have a relationship with it. And if indeed you don't like it, or you're afraid of it, just see if those parts of you could relax a little bit so you could just get to know it, and it might have some surprising things to tell you. In other words, see if you could just be mindfully curious about it. And if you can't, that's okay. But if you can't, don't proceed with this. And if you get to that curious place, just ask it what it wants you to know about itself. And wait for an answer. Don't think of the answer, so thinking parts can relax too. Just wait for an answer to come to you from that place, in or around your body. And then another question would be, ask it what it's afraid would happen if it didn't do this job inside of you. And again, just wait for the answer. Don't think of an answer. What's it afraid would happen if it didn't do this? And if you got an answer to that question, then it told you about what it's protecting. So if it's possible, extend some appreciation to it or compassion for it, and just see how it reacts to that. and ask it if you could heal or change what it protects so it was free to this responsibility, what would it like to do instead inside of you? It was really liberated. What would it like to do instead? And just wait for an answer. Another interesting question, how old does it think you are? Not how old is it, but how old does it think you are? And if you get a younger age than you are, maybe update it and see how it reacts. And then thank it for letting you know whatever it did. And then begin your journey back out here, taking deep breaths if that helps.
Thank you.
So I'd say normally we'd have some time to have you talk to somebody about the experience. Are we going to a break now?
So you will be going into a Q&A in the
Right.
village in, I believe, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So if those of you want to explore and ask more questions directly with Dick or talk to him about what you experienced here, there'll be time in the village stage, which you walked past as you were getting here, to have more time to engage. So there'll be that, and then you're also around. Are you around all weekend?
I'm around all weekend. Yeah.
You're around all weekend, so he will also be around. So I know our time is short, but he'll be available both on the main stage, or on the village stage. If you check your schedule, I think it's about 30 minutes, and then around, as most of our speakers are, which is great. Wisdom 2.0 often gets people to just stay the whole weekend, which is wonderful, so they can be available to you all. Thank you again, and I want to honor your creative work in exploring the inner dimension and finding pathways through that heal and help people. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.